Boop. Welcome to Top Deck City. My name is Grim, and what I have for you today is it's something I've been putting off for a long time. Um, I've been putting this off since Eldraine came out and hit its popularity in the summer of Oko, um, or the year of Oko. And this is my Elktoberfest deck. That's my little fun pun there. Um, so initially, this deck I had built to be just a Simic deck. I'm sorry, it was a Bant deck, and I had pulled the cards for it. I believe I was going to use Tulane as the commander, but it just didn't feel right because the commander wasn't an elk. Then Ikoria came out and gave me a five-color elk, at which point I was like super excited to put this deck together. Now, it's still relatively just a Bant deck, but I did sneak in a couple of other black and I think one red card just to help the deck out a little bit. So yeah, it's an elk tribal deck. It was an excuse for me to play with the Oko that I had gotten and then had gotten banned. And so I wanted to use Oko, and I have like these sweet sleeves with Oko's image on them. And so yeah, so here's the deck. I'm gonna go through it like step by step. And instead of doing rant this time, though, I'm gonna actually talk about some of the cards I put into the deck to help out Jegantha, because Jegantha the Wellspring says I don't care about the companion mechanic. It's a 5/5, and it taps to add Wooburg, and this mana can't be spent to pay generic mana cost. So, in a five-color deck that's mostly just green, white, and blue, I got to find something to do with that black and red mana. And so, this card, Horizon Stone, is the main card I'll be using to save that black and red mana. So if I would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. So that's a pretty good deal. It keeps that mana for me. This little add-on here, this little trick I learned from my buddy Mark, who also has a Jegantha deck. Another thing that Jegantha wants to do is, it's a tap creature. So I have two cards in here to help untap it. Thousand Year Elixir, which allows him to use his ability um, immediately, as if he had haste, and it's pay one to untap target creature. So getting 10 mana with Jegantha seems like a pretty sweet deal. And then Vitalize, which is somewhat of a protection card. Someone sends their army at me and thinks I'm tapped out. Just playing that one mana, untap all creatures you control is a pretty good deal. And then the other two protection cards, those are the main cards I have just to help with Jegantha. I mean, it's really an elk deck, but I did wanted to give Jegantha some support. But I also have Swiftfoot Boots and Eerie Interlude. Eerie Interlude, I just think is if you can play white in your deck, then you put Eerie Interlude in it. I think it's one of the best white protection spells for your board state. You can cast it at instant speed and exiling a number of target creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their own control at the beginning of the next end step. So I absolutely love this. You can double up on your ETB triggers, and then of course Swiftfoot Boots is the standard. Give your creature hexproof and haste, and we definitely want haste on Jegantha. So moving on. So let's talk about elks. There is quite a few elks in Magic the Gathering. Not a lot of good ones, but enough that I don't feel. This deck is going to be like a 5 or 6. I'm not expecting to win a lot of games with it, but I am expecting to have a lot of fun with it, and also draw a lot of shade for playing with Oko. So this one, this is the pile of elks that I have, and these are actual elks. The first elk we have here is Burnishart. Cat's playing in a bag, apparently. What the hell is he doing? What are you doing? All right. Sorry about that. So we have Burnishart. He's also counts as a ramp card because he's going to fetch you some lands. This one's kind of cool from M10, Great Sable Stag. It's a 3/3, can't be countered, has protection from blue, protection from black. So could be pretty nice. because he's got that protection. Dawn Treader Elk, also a ramping elk. You sack Dawn Treader Elk, search your library for a basic land card, put that land on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. It's kind of like a crappier Zakor Tri-Builder. Golden Hind, 2 mana for a 2/1 elk, and it's tapped to add one blue, or one green to your mana pool. Somberweld Stag, he's a fighting elk. He's 5 mana for a 4/3, and when he enters the battlefield, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. Next we have Stampeding Elk Herd. This card, it's 5 mana for a 5/5. It's formidable. When Stampeding Elk Herd attacks, if a creature you control have power total 8 or greater, creatures you control have trample until on the turn. So that's good. It's a pretty good deal. Just giving your whole squad trample. Bellowing Elk, 4 mana for a 4/2 elk. As long as you had another creature enter the battlefield under your control this turn, Bellowing Elk has trample and indestructible. Not too bad. This guy is pretty solid. He came out with Ikoria as well. The Auspicious Starix, he's 5 mana for a 6/6, so that's pretty good. But it's the mutate ability that makes him really good. So it's 6 mana. When this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile X permanent cards, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Put those permanent cards onto the battlefield. And I do have a couple extra mutate cards in here, which I'll get to a little bit later. So the Commander Legends elk here, the Dawnglade Regent. This is a badass elk. He's 7 mana for an 8/8, and when he enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. And as long as you are the Monarch, permanents you control have hexproof. Yeah, I like that. You know, any hits, he hits hard. Glimmerpoint Stag. We have a white elk here. He is a 4 mana for a 3/3 Vigilant elk, and when he enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So, someone steals your stuff, you can go get it back with a Glimmerpoint Stag, and then you get your Eerie Interlude and do it again to try and get some ETB triggers. Another white elk here, a Starcrown Stag. I was starting to run short on elks that were actually playable. I didn't think this guy was too bad, and I kept him in here because his power is 3, which I'll get to later. But yeah, so he's 4 mana. When he attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. So, not the worst thing in the world. Heliod's Emissary is very similar to Starcrown Stag, in that it's 4 mana for a 3/3 enchantment creature elk with bestow of 7. And then when Heliod's Emissary or the enchanted creature attacks, tap target creature an opponent controls. And the enchanted creature gets +3/+3. So it's a little buff spell / elk. And then this guy also from Ikoria, Splendor Mare, 3 mana for a 3/3 with lifelink, and you can cycle it for 2. And when you cycle Splendor Mare, put a lifelink counter on target creature you control. Not great, but 3 mana for a 3/3 lifelink, and then you can get some card draw out of it. So those are the real elks. These are actual elk creatures. The next category I have here are the wannabe elks. So these are cards that, number one, I either thought looked like an elk and should have been an elk, or is a shapeshifter. So Boneyard Lurker definitely looks like an elk, but it's actually a nightmare beast. It's got 4 mana. It's 4 mana for a 4/4. It's got mutate, and when this creature mutates, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So that'll work good with the Starix. Migratory Greathorn could have definitely been an elk if they wanted it to be, but they made it a beast, and it's 4 mana for a 3/4. When this creature mutates, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. Another ramp card. Archon of Absolution has an elk head. That's definitely an elk right there. And he is 4 mana for a 3/2 flying protection from white. Creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. So that's a pretty good deal. It's like a baby ghostly prison. Realmwalker. It's a 3 mana 2/3 shapeshifter. It's a changeling, so it counts as every creature type, so technically an elk. As Realmwalker enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. So, allow me to cast some elks from the top of my library. Mass Vandal. He's probably the coolest not elk there is. He's 2 mana for a 1/3, and he's also a changeling. So when Mass Vandal enters the battlefield, exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, exile target artifact or enchantment and opponent controls. I absolutely love this card in tribal decks that can use green. Morit of the Frost. She is 2 blue, 1 green, and 2 colorless, and she's also a changeling, so she's technically an elk. You may have Morit of the Frost enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and snow, in addition to its other types. And if it's a creature, it enters the battlefield with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and it has changeling, so that's pretty cool. Now, one thing that sucks about the shapeshifter changelings is I can't mutate on them because they technically count as humans as well. But I think I have enough elks in here that it won't be an issue. And then the last one we have here is Bloodline Pretender. He's a 3/3 shapeshifter changeling who's a 2/2, and he's also an artifact and 2/2. As Bloodline Pretender enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever another creature type of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodline Pretender. So he can get pretty big, especially when I'm casting a lot of those baby elks. Next category I have here are a couple of cards that care about elks. First being Oko Thief of Crowns. Oh man, this card was such a bane for standard for an entire year. Oko Thief of Crowns, 3 mana for 4 loyalty planeswalker. It's +2 to create a food. +1. Target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk creature with base power toughness 3/3. So what I've decided to do is use these particular beast tokens that have this elk-looking beast on it, and I'm going to use this to cover up my opponent's creatures when they get elkified. Arcane Adaptation. As Arcane Adaptation enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to the other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So I put this in here just to make all those other things that I showed earlier that weren't elks into elks. And so anytime I have any of these triggers, let me look at the top of my library to see if there's an elk there. This will also work with it. And then same thing with Maskwood Nexus. Does the same thing as Arcane Adaptation, except it has pay 3 and tap. Create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with changeling. And that changeling will also be an elk. And so those are my cares about elks. I guess we'll go to some of the traditional stuff here. This is the remaining ramp spells I have that aren't elk related. Wayfarer's Bauble, Migration's Path. Although we could make the argument that these things are elks, but I think they're really like Buffalo or something. Farseek and Cultivate, pretty standard stuff there. Next category I have here is card draw. So we got the Lifecrafter's Bestiary. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay 1 green. If you do, draw a card. The deck is mostly green, so I thought this was a good inclusion. Return of the Wild Speaker. This is a hybrid game ender / card draw, but most likely I'll end up using it for the card draw. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. Some of these elves can get pretty big, especially like the Dawnglade Regent. He's pretty cool. Compost. This is a 2 mana. Whenever a black card is put into one of my opponent's graveyards, I may draw a card. Black's pretty popular right now in my play group, so I'm thinking I'll actually draw pretty good off of that. Amazingly, blue is not. So we used to run Carpet of Flowers, and it turns out to be like a dead card in my hand most of the time. So I've been switching Compost in for the Carpet of Flowers in most of my green decks. Life's Legacy. 2 mana as additional cost to cast Life's Legacy. Sacrifice a creature. Draw cards equal to sacrifice creature's power. Wish that was instant. Balagad Recovery. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I consider that card draw. And then Elemental Bond. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. A lot of the elks are power 3. And on to my next topic here. I have cards with elks in the artwork. And starting off with Vivian, Monster's Advocate, who is, you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. And that +1 ability makes that 3/3 green elk beast looking thing. And that would also work with my Elemental Bonds. I thought that was a pretty good synergy. So you mix a 3/3 beast, and then you can put a Vigilance counter, or Reach counter, or Trample counter on it. And then the -2, whenever you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost and put it onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. That works pretty good with my commander, being he's 5 mana, so most of the elks are either under 5 or like significantly above it. So, hello, Cypress. Okay, what are you doing, buddy? Oh, all right. So my cat is photobombing. No, you can't lay down there. Yeah, come on. Oh, no, not on the cards. Okay, okay. Sorry about that. Um. So yeah. So here's a forest with an elk in the artwork. This is from Jumpstart, and we have Leafkin Druid. And if you look right here in the background, there is an elk giving you a mean look. He's also a ramp card. Yavimai Elder, another ramp and draw card. And there's an old elk growing out of his head. Gift of Growth. This card's probably going to be not that useful in my deck, but man, look at that elk. It's my turtle making noise. Man, everyone's getting involved in my video today. Shared Summons. That is definitely an elk. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards with different names, reveal them, and put them into your hand, and shuffle your library. Genesis Storm. We have this cool elk, like 3 elks going around in a circle. Whenever you cast a spell, copy it for each time you cast your commander from the command zone this game. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land permanent card. You may put that card onto the battlefield, then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put into the battlefield on the bottom of your library in a random order. Not a very good card for this deck, but man, it's got 3 elks in the artwork, so I got to use it. Old School Mirage, Rampant Growth. It's probably an antelope, but I'm pretending it's an elk. Kenra's Transformation, a nice little removal spell. Enchanted creature, when Kenra's Transformation enters the battlefield, draw a card, and then an enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green elk creature with base power 3/3. It's pretty good. Font of Fertility. If you look close, you can see that there is an elk right there, walking in the water and drinking some water. And Font of Fertility is a 1-drop. It's 2 mana enchantment, sacrifice. Font of Fertility, search your library for a basic land card, put onto the battlefield, tap, and shuffle your library. Another ramp card. And then Sarah's Blessing. And we have this maiden hanging out with an elk. And attacking does not cause creatures you control to tap, which I thought was pretty good. For 2 mana, this is a pretty solid enchantment. And I will have a lot of creatures on the board. Next category I have here is my removal. Most of this is pretty straightforward. Ram through, so a little spot removal. Crows and Grip. I like this particular one because it has to do with antlers in the corner here. Binding of the Old Gods. I wanted this particular card in here because it lets you fetch a forest that's not basic. And I like the fact it gives all your creatures Death Touch. So you can probably swing out on somebody with all your Death Touch elks. Knight of Autumn. Initially, I thought they were riding on elks, but I think they're just like moss horses. But anyway, I do like this card. I like how it can get you some life. It works with the flicker mechanics that are in the deck and somewhat. And yeah, it's a artifact enchantment removal. Path to Exile, Old Faithful. Austere Command. Yeah, I got that one for just getting rid of all the artifacts and enchantments I don't like. Shatter to the Sky. And Cleansing Nova, another artifact and enchantment removal. My group meta has definitely drifted towards the artifact and enchantment heavy, so I need to stockpile more of that stuff. Here's some cards that I just thought would be useful in the deck. Pyre of Heroes cares about creature type, so this would let me go fetch up bigger elks. Rhythm of the Wild, giving those elks haste or a +1/+1 counter, and my spells can't be countered. I think this is the only red spell besides Jegantha in the deck. Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, giving all my creature spells flash, pretty sweet. Exiling a creature. I'm sorry. Until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gains vigilance and reach. So elks don't fly, so that kind of helps. And then looking at the top 3 cards of your library, exile 1 face down and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as the card remains exiled, you may look at that card and you may cast it if it's a creature card. So I like that. And then this one I thought was kind of neat. It's a newer card from Kaldheim. I haven't seen anyone play with it yet, but Reflections of Lityara. 5 mana enchantment. You name a creature type when it enters the battlefield, and whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. So yeah, I can make more elks. The second to last category I have here is how I win. So Mirror Entity. He's an elk, and he's going to pump everybody up, even though he looks like a big alien baby man. Kamal, Heart of Croza. Yep, gives everybody the pump and trample. Love it. Tribal Unity. I wish there were elks in this artwork. Maybe I'll have a custom done. But creatures of the type of your choice get +X/+X until on the turn. It's a pretty good deal. And then I put another Oko in here. This is the one from the Planeswalker deck. His first two abilities are, whatever, put 2+1/+1 counters up to one target creature, and then he becomes a copy of a creature, but that -7 until end of the turn. Each creature you control has base power and toughness 10/10 and gains trample. Don't know if we'll ever get to it, but man, that would be a sweet win with Oko if I did. And then the last category I have here is lands, and I actually decided to flex a little bit with lands because I like Jegantha, and I actually want this deck to do somewhat well, even though it's very underpowered. So Cascading Cataracts, Reflecting Pool, Command Tower, Transguild Promenade, Gateway Plaza, the World Tree. Thought that would be pretty fun to have in here. I don't really have any gods in the deck, but I like that as long as you control 6 or more lands, lands you control have to have 1 mana of any color. Alright, Bark Channel Pathway, so this is the blue and green. Crag Crown Pathway, that's the green and red. Branch Loft Pathway, this is the white and green. And Dark Boar Pathway, this is the green and black. And I loved all these borderless cards, and I just wanted to use them because I have them. And then moving on, I have all these awesome alternate art Ikoria cards. The Ralgren Triome, which is the Island Mountain Plains, which you can get with Farseek. Indatha Triome, Plain Swamp Forest. Yep. And all these have cycling too, which is awesome. Savai Triome, Mountain Plains Swamp. Ketria Triome, the Forest Island Mountain. And Zagoth Triome, the Swamp Forest Island. I love this comic book art. This is absolutely my favorite. These are my favorite lands too. And I've just been waiting to put them in a deck, and I didn't know where I was going to put them. And now I can put them with Jegantha. And then the last 2 lands I have Bonder's Enclave, which is draw a card, activate its ability only if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. My commander's power is 5, so I'm hoping that comes into play. And then Mutavault. It can become a 2/2 creature with all creature types, so it's a land that becomes an elk. So I like that. So yep, that's Jegantha the Wellspring. Elk Tribal Oko deck as well. With these cool little beasts. And yeah. So I also got this cool deck box too, which also has an elk on it, because this is the Auspicious Starix. So, alright, hope you enjoyed it.